So the next task is to use this curve to create two different geometries. One geometry will be used to deform the terrain, and another geometry will be the actual river plane. So, but before that, we need to set up the normals and the scale attribute for every point. Essentially, the scale attribute will affect the width of the river at any particular point. This time I'm gonna use attribute VAP, okay? And here we're gonna just deal with the normals part. So I'm gonna say, gonna import, for every point, we're gonna import the previous point, okay? So I'm gonna say subtract constant. I'm gonna say import point, first input, the attributes position, and then I'm gonna say subtract, so the previous subtract the previous position and the current position. This will give us a vector that points from the current position to the previous position. What we can do next is normalize this vector, because we are only interested in the direction. Okay, this will be our normal, and then we need to set the up vector. So I can call this up of type vector. This should be 0, 1. Then I'm gonna say use this node to set parameters attribute, and always export this attribute. Now, as you can see, now we have some normals. Next, I'm gonna say resample. Right, and let's show something like this. Okay, like maybe 0.4 should be fine. And we want to smooth positions a little bit, like just a little bit. Need to be careful with this. And then I'm gonna say smooth the normals. Right, I'm gonna just give it something this. And now we are free to use the Houdini sweep node. So we can create a geometry along this curve. I'm gonna set the width to 5. Okay. Let me just hide this. I don't need it now. And let's look at the result. Okay. So, as you can see, without the normal setup, it will just look off, right? What you can do next is adjust the resample and the smoothing values, right? All right, let's see. Like if you set this 0.3, 0.5, 0.4. Yeah, I mean 0.4 is the way to go, I guess. And as you can see, this saddle smoothing does a great job here. And the normals fixes some of the weird stretching. Areas like this, we will deal with that in our next task. essentially what we will do is for the scale attribute which affect the width, we will make sure in areas with high slope like this one for example, the width will be smaller, maybe half smaller than what is supposed to be. And in areas where there is like sudden turn like this, the width should smoothly get smaller too. And finally, let me turn on the terrain here. And finally, like river that goes down into the terrain, eventually creating things like canyons, should be more narrow. Okay. So next task is to add the width scaling based on slope. So to do that, first thing we need to adjust the normals. So I'm gonna say transfer attribute here. Okay. And if you see the transfer attribute will just transfer the normals from the previous curve to the new resampled curve. But all I will have to do here is just set the max sample count to something like 2. Can set the distance blend to something like x01 and set this something like 1, maybe a bit like this. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this like that. And next step, we're gonna add attribute VUP somewhere here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna compare, gonna do the dot product of the previous normal and the next normal. So we're gonna say add constant. We want to grab the next normal and the previous normal. So I'm gonna subtract constant. And then I'm gonna say import point attribute. Should go here. First import normal, import normal. And then I'm gonna say dot product of these two normals. If you want, you can visualize your dot product like this, the color attribute. And I'm gonna say complement. Okay, so I'm gonna say complement the dot product, and it will give me this. So as you can see, we started to get somewhere, right? As you can see, the areas with high slope in any direction, it's colored in white almost. And then we're gonna clamp this. Okay, so let's clamp this and apply a fit range function. So needs to go 0.5, needs to go to 1, 0.5, 0, and the source max should be 0.5. And we started to get something. Okay, we can use this as the scale attribute. Let's set this to 0.5 for now. Now I'm gonna say bind, and then it's gonna be scale of type vector, Where is it? This one. Override type with input always, and I'm gonna say float to vector. Just plug this here. Now as you can see, the sweep node uses the scale attribute to adjust the width of the river. You can always like come back to the fit here and adjust the width of areas with high slope. So something like this should be fine. And another thing that would be wise to do here, let's just, for example, pick this area, okay? We can always play with this sample thing, right? It can give us good result. All right, let's see. All right, now right after this node we got a smooth. Okay, so we want to smooth the scale attribute. Okay, I'm gonna set it something like this. Can always smooth this further. And then we're gonna say attribute noise. And add some noise to the scale attribute. I'm gonna say multiply by 1.5. Right, something like that. I'm gonna reduce the element size. Can always tweak this. Right, you can change the noise type. Make something simplex might be the best one. Yeah, let's just stick with this. Set it 1.5. And another thing is currently we are looking at the previous point and the next point. If you want, you can look 2 points ahead. Okay, it might help to detect areas with high slope, because obviously the point resolution we got is a little bit high, right? So if you look 2 points ahead, might be wise. And yeah, so this is the slope based scaling. Next task will be to do depth based scaling. Okay, so based on how deep it is into the landscape, we can scale it down or up based on your preferences. So the next step is we want to calculate the depth of the river compared to its previous or let's say to the original curve, and based on that we can adjust the river width. So for example, in areas here, most likely you will have a canyon, right? So usually the width should be much smaller than anywhere else. So first thing, let's just rename these attribute verbs to something more meaningful. So I'm gonna say calculate attributes in this one. And here we're gonna say calculate width. Now, inside our calculate attributes, we want to use the original curve as a second input, so we can have access to its points and do the comparison with the new height. Let's import the point so from the second curve, or from, let's say, from the original curve. So we're gonna give the same point number here, and then we're gonna say subtract. So let's subtract this and subtract this one, and here we're gonna say vector to float. I'm gonna call this canyon depth, and then gonna say fit in range. So the value, we're gonna grab the y component, and let's say max depth is 10 units. Okay, we can adjust this later. And let's export this attribute using bind export. I'm gonna call this depth, and let's try to visualize what's going on here. All right. Here we need to say grab the second input, right? Now, as you can see, what's happening in areas where the height is almost 10 units, you get this red colored areas like this. So what we can do right now is use this attribute inside the calculate with VAP. Let's just go here. You can use it here to adjust the width. So I'm gonna say attrib import. I'm gonna import the depth, use a multiply, and then fit in range. This needs to be a float. I'm just gonna leave it 1 and 1 for now, and let's do the multiply thing. This. So now if I adjust this, as you can see, I'm adjusting the width of the canyons. So I want it to be like maybe, let's say 0.675 if you want. or if you want to, you can actually make it wider. Like, depends on your choice. But it makes more sense if it is more narrow. An additional thing we can do is we can adjust our curve a little bit. So yeah, let's adjust our curve so it fits better with the terrain. All right. So just this one. Oops. I'm gonna enable snap to grid and just gonna try to move this one somewhere here. Okay. And this one should be fine, guess. Just want to make sure kinda it fits best with the terrain. And now something like this should be fine. All we have to do is maybe increase the width in the sweep node. So I'm just gonna go to the sweep node and set the width. Maybe something like maybe 10. Okay, let me just turn off the visibility of our terrain and take a look on how this one looks. So as you can see, in areas with high slope, we get smaller width, and in canyons, same thing. All right. One additional step you can do is use the sweep node and go to the scale section here, check apply scalar on curve, and then you can add points to this spline to control the width at different areas. Okay, like for example, you might say, as it gets towards the end, I wanted to get more wider, right? Maybe like 1, 2, 5, right? And then in the very center, okay, you may want it to be even wider, like something like 2. Okay. An additional tweak we can do is can go back to our curve here, right? And we can, let's see, yeah, what we can do is apply a smooth node here, smooth the positions like this, so we get rid of, you know, noises like this one. Okay, and it will help us later when we generate the mesh. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Okay, if you like uncheck, well, like if you uncheck this one, you can see the difference, right? Okay, and regarding the resolution, we can also tweak that. I mean, maybe this is a bit too much. Let's look at the water cascades area. Make sure don't mess it up. Right, like this one. Set it to 105, 075, 0655. Yeah, we can leave it 05 for now. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, you still get some of these issues here, so you need to be careful with the width. And let's see. You can always tweak this further. Something like that. And here we can tweak this further, but we may not want to do too much here because else we will mess up the cascades. So yeah, the normal is maybe 100. Okay, this one is already much better, right? Like you can always smooth this out. A little bit. Let's see. Yeah, we will see about this one. Maybe we don't really need it. So I guess we are done with the river mesh. There is just one additional step uh, we need to do um, regarding like some inputs that can come from Unreal. Like in Unreal, for every spline point, you can adjust the width, right? So we can grab that scaling and just take it into account here, okay? So most likely we will do that later on, okay? It's fine for now. Also, another thing you can do is you can add like more points here, so you can like let's say I'm gonna add another point here, all right, and you can use that to make sure you don't have areas like this if you want. As you can see, you can change this, that. This looks already much better. Looks already much better. So yeah, like feel free to take some time, you know, and adjust your input curve, even though most likely the curve input we will use in most cases, most likely you might want it to be some Unreal spline, right? We will do that later, but for now, while you're developing the tool, might be a good idea to have a decent curve input, right? Because like no matter how good the tool can be, like if you give it just a very weird input, it might just act weird, right?